We only make this when the weather turns cold. Let's give it a try. Trust me, it's absolutely delicious. It's such a simple dish, but it's both filling and tasty. The cold season is here. We've already had snow, even though it's only November. That means it's the perfect time to make vinaigrette. What exactly is vinaigrette? Well, it was arguably the most iconic salad throughout the entire Soviet era. We ate vinaigrette everywhere, in our school cafeterias, in kindergarten, when we were little ones. Even during our university years, we would always make it in our dormitory rooms. Vinaigrette is a beloved staple of Russian cuisine. It first emerged toward the end of the 19th century. The name actually comes from the French word vinaigrette, referring to the vinegar-based dressing traditionally used for salads. In its modern form, the salad combines boiled vegetables like beetroot, potatoes, and carrots, along with sauerkraut or pickled cucumbers, and of course, green peas. This particular combination of ingredients made vinaigrette not only affordable and filling, but perfectly suited for the cold climate of the USSR. Before we can start making our salad though, we'll need to gather all our ingredients. Let's head to the store to pick up our vegetables, and then we can begin cooking. Carrots, beetroot, onions, and potatoes. You might wonder why vinaigrette became the most popular salad across the Soviet Union. The answer is simple. It was incredibly economical. Every single ingredient was readily available throughout the year. Plus, it was remarkably filling, and as I mentioned before, it was something everyone could afford. And there's another interesting question. Why did people make vinaigrette specifically during the coldest months? The main reason is that these vegetables were the most affordable and readily available during this time of year. Here are the vegetables I just picked up for our vinaigrette. They're still sold in exactly the same way as they were back in Soviet times. Our next step is to give them a thorough washing and get them boiling. These basic vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and beetroot, they're the foundation of vinaigrette. Back then, they were incredibly inexpensive. And because these vegetables were so substantial, vinaigrette wasn't just treated as a simple salad. It often served as a complete second course. Now that we've boiled and peeled most of our vegetables, but with the beetroot, there's one secret that I'll show you now. And here's how we boiled the beetroot with one small secret. Since beetroot takes a very long time to cook, we thoroughly washed it and put it on to boil. We boiled it for about 30 to 40 minutes, then took it off the heat, covered it tightly with a lid just like this, and let it cool completely. After that, we peeled it and could continue making the salad. There's another interesting thing about vinaigrette that I should mention. One of its best qualities is how well it keeps. People would always make large batches because it could easily last for several days. Now, let's put the finishing touches on our vinaigrette. All our vegetables are boiled, cooled, and peeled. Traditionally, pickled cucumbers and onions are essential ingredients, though I personally skip the onions since I'm not too fond of them. And if you're feeling a bit fancy, you can add canned green peas, which is exactly what we're doing today. The next step is to chop everything up quickly, mix it all together, and that's basically it. Just add some vegetable oil, and you're done. You know, I have such fond memories of making vinaigrette. Everyone would get their own knife and cutting board, and we'd all sit together, chatting while carefully cutting the vegetables into these perfect little cubes. Though these days, I'll be honest with you, I use this modern grater instead. With this handy tool, I can get everything chopped up in no time. Just a few quick passes, and our vinaigrette will be ready to go. And there you have it. The vinaigrette I've been telling you so much about today is finally ready. We've combined all our vegetables and dressed them with the vegetable oil. Now here's an important tip. Let it rest in the refrigerator for at least 2 to 3 hours. This gives all those wonderful vegetables time to mingle and share their flavors with each other. The result is an incredibly simple but absolutely delicious dish. Let's take a spoon, take our vinaigrette, a spoonful of vinaigrette, and we'll try it. The last time I had vinaigrette salad was exactly a year ago. It's genuinely delicious, trust me. It's a proper wholesome dish. When you pair it with a cutlet or some chicken and have a cup of tea alongside. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into a cooking show here. I just wanted to tell you about this salad because it truly deserves recognition. And I'll say it again. This was truly the signature salad of the Soviet Union. It was 1994. And the Soviet Union had essentially ceased to exist. The government back then showed absolutely no concern for its people. I remember distinctly, I had just given birth. My son was barely 2 months old, and we had absolutely no money to our name. At that time, we found ourselves right in the middle of gang warfare. It was incredibly challenging. I'll share more about that in future videos. Trust me, it's a fascinating story, and you won't hear it from many other people. But that's not our focus right now. Right now, we're talking about how everyone abandoned each other back then. Friends turned their backs. Everyone just fought for their own survival, even close family members. That's exactly what happened. During that time, people changed overnight, consumed by hunger. But I understand hunger. It's merciless. Nobody could make sense of what was happening. The Soviet Union was falling apart. Everything was crumbling. I remember that my husband's mother was the only one who helped us during those times. She suffered from serious illnesses and lived by herself. Life was tremendously difficult for her, yet she still helped us immensely, sharing everything she could spare with us. I remember those little packets of instant soup. They were manufactured in the Soviet Union, but hardly anyone would eat them in normal times. They were mainly meant for hiking trips or camping expeditions. No one considered them proper food back then. Those instant soups became like a luxury for us. She would provide us with these soup packets. One packet was enough to make 2 small bowls of soup. You'd just boil some water, tear open the packet, and pour the contents in. What you got was water, noodles, and some mysterious floating particles. Nothing like the instant soups you see nowadays. But for us, it was absolutely delicious. We were just grateful to have something to eat. Of course, I maintained a tiny financial reserve. We lived in a 5-story apartment building at the time, with a small shop on the ground floor. I would meticulously budget this small amount of money so that every morning I could afford to buy 100 grams of cookies for breakfast, just so we could have something that felt like a proper breakfast, you understand. Having these cheapest cookies with our morning tea gave us some sense of normalcy. It provided a small comfort, making us feel that perhaps not everything was completely lost. After all, we were still able to have cookies with our tea. And I had to be so careful with portioning that I could only purchase 100 grams at a time. Buying a whole kilogram wasn't financially feasible. Besides, I knew that if we bought that much at once, we wouldn't be able to resist eating it all immediately. That's simply how things were in those days. But the most vital thing was vinaigrette. Every so often, my mother-in-law would prepare vinaigrette for us. I remember she would send it about once a week, packed in a 1-liter glass jar. Such a glass, 1-liter jar. My husband would bring home this jar of vinaigrette from her place. And for us then, it was like having black caviar with blini. It was such an absolute delicacy. It was incredibly delicious and satisfying. Those times were difficult, extremely difficult. She's no longer with us now, but whenever I make vinaigrette, although our relationship wasn't particularly warm, I'll be completely honest, I always thank her silently. Thank her so much for helping us so generously back then, for sharing everything she could with us. I apologize. It's terrifying when you're living one kind of life, with a good job and a young family, when you should be just enjoying life, and suddenly everything collapses, everything turns completely upside down. Around that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger's film Red Heat had just been released. And I remember watching Red Heat. It was interesting, certainly, but it was full of such stereotypes about the Soviet Union, portrayed everything from such an angle that it was simultaneously amusing, comical, and honestly, quite offensive. I want to show you what all of this was really like. So keep following along. It's going to be truly fascinating.